When do you think Haronir will be made playable? My mind says 11.1, but my heart says a secret release in 11.0. Ooh, that is a really good question. I like that very much. Okay, so the Haronir. In my opinion, they will definitely 100% be a playable race. They've just got too many options, like playable, like customizable options on their bodies for it not to. It's got to be, right? And you can say, well, you know, maybe Blizz put in all of those options because they're a race that's going to get used a lot in the story, and it's just much, much easier to kind of create NPCs if there's loads of options and they're kind of placed in the same kind of, you know, like bins, as it were, as playable characters and stuff like that. And you do have a point. You know, obviously, even though the Kultirans weren't originally designed to be playable races, they also had playable race levels of customizations and stuff like that. Likewise, the Vulpera, right? There's a difference between the Kultirans and the Vulpera and the Harronir, though. Well, one, they were all playable races in the end, but also the Haronir aren't in the fucking story at all. This is something that people are missing out on. You know, I have played through the campaign on the beta, and they're not there. There's like one little quest line with Orwaina, which is literally like a 2-minute thing where you meet her and you go back to like their little camp, but there's no one there. And there's max level, there's a little quest in their camp, and then there's like one NPC somewhere else on that map, and that's it. Like, this game is not swimming with Haronir, okay? Like they are not everywhere, which makes me think that maybe they're going to be heavily involved in one of the other patches, because at the moment there's just zero reason to have this many options to make them with. They just don't really feature in the story at this point. And in the to the extent that they do feature, they are basically an adventure that the Arathi go on. It's so weird. So yeah, in my opinion, the Haronir are 100% going to be a playable race. And the question is when? And that's a great question. I think that is going to depend quite a lot on another interesting question, which is how long is the War Within going to be? How many patches is the War Within going to be? Can we get some numbers in chat? If 11.0 is one patch, 11.2 would be 2 patches. Sorry, 11.1 would be 2 patches. 11.2 would be 3 patches, etc. How many patches are in this game? Yeah, 2 major patches. Yeah, I think that's what we all think, right? I think that's best case scenario, and you know what that means is, and what I think that means is, they've already talked in interviews about how the impression that I get from interviews is that they're not really going to do a Fated Awakened season again, which I thought was really good news when I heard it, because I hadn't played the Awakened season. I only played the Fated season, and I hated the Fated season, but Awakened season's great. I'm actually quite into it, but it's not new content, is it? And I think, you know, I would happily lose Season 4 if we got an expansion instead. You know? I would not be upset if the layout of The War Within was 11.0, 11.05, 11.07, and I think we will keep the 5 and 7s in between. I think we will have 2 minor patches in between the major patches, I think. 11.1, 11.15, 11.17, 11.2, 11.15, 11.17. I think that is the most likely layout of the expansion. Let me put it in Photoshop just to show you. Shadowlands went like this. 9.0, 9.05, 9.1, 9.15. Let's put that there, sorry. Nine point two, 9.25. And within that, we had season 1, season 2, season 3, and then season 4. Then we had Dragonflight. Yeah, I'm giving you all the good graphics today, boys. Dragonflight took the exact same shape, rather surprisingly, but with more patches. 10.0, 10.05, 10.07, 10.1, 10.15, 10, and this is, I mean, this is where you really realize how much content was in Dragonflight, right? 10.2, 10.25, 10.2.7. And then we had season 1, season 2, season 3, season 4. My assumption is that for War Within, graphic design is my passion. Yeah, you know it. So my assumption is going to be that we go 11.1, oh, 11.0, sorry, 11.05, 11.07, and I really hope we keep those 07 patches. They're so good. 11.2, 1, whoops, 11.15, 11.17, 11.2, 11.25, 11.27. We have season 1, season 2, season 3, and then we just scrap season 7. Season 4. You know? So that's technically less content, right? But I don't think in reality anyone would actually claim it as less content, right? I mean, that's wrong. Lots of people would. You'd get like videos from all of the YouTubers who you know I'm talking about right now, and they would be like, it's less content. One less season. There's one less season in this fucking game, and they're charging us for another expansion instead. What about Legion Remix? Well, that can still be in season 3. They can just do it later on. It's fine. The same content for 18 to 21 months will be more dense content, but it's not a bigger amount. No, I mean, this is less content, right? You know, you're missing season 4. But this is the shape that I expect them to take. So that would give you, I don't think it'd be 6 months earlier, but I think the expansion might be coming maybe like therefore 4 months earlier than you would expect. Or maybe even 3, which is still a quarter of a year earlier. So that's what I would expect. So in terms of like narrative content, you would still have the same amount as in Dragonflight. Way more than Shadowlands. In terms of patches where actual new content happens, you'd still get the same amount as Dragonflight. In terms of new raids, you'd still get the same amount of Dragonflight. Assuming there's a mega dungeon in there as well, you'd still get the same amount of dungeons and everything like that. And that would, yeah, I mean, that would then see Midnight hitting second quarter of 2026, which would be wild. It just seems like they're trying to automate as much of the process as possible. Really? What do you mean by that? And I'm not saying you're wrong or that that's good or bad, but I'm not sure I understand what you're saying. It's really not less. I know they'll say it is, but there's literally nothing new. Oh, tier set appearances and bonuses. Yeah, exactly. And And I think I would be not just happy with that, I think that would be preferable to the Dragonflight model. Like, I wouldn't just be happy. You know, I wouldn't go, oh, that'll do. I would actually find that preferable to Dragonflight, assuming that Midnight did come sooner. Maybe like here. You know? Which I think must be their plan, right? All the numbers are prefabbed and cookie cutter. 8 dungeons, 1 mega, 3 raids with 8 bosses each, rinse, repeat. I don't think every raid in this expansion is going to have 8 bosses, to be honest. Yeah, I think they're going to be aiming for an 18-month turnaround between expansions in the World Soul Saga. Ivashkov, yeah. So it won't matter who does what because it's a predetermined algorithm. Well, it's a schedule. It's a predetermined schedule, yeah, rather than an algorithm. I mean, it's a schedule that they have decided on that they will try to meet. What do you think will happen after the World Soul Saga? New saga. If the World Soul Saga is as popular as they're going to want it to be, and I think there's like real value in presenting stories as stories, which is what the World Soul Saga does. So what the World Soul Saga does is it shifts focus from an expansion to a story. It's like, this story is going to last 3 expansions. And, you know, it's got a beginning, middle, and end sort of thing, right? But it's this story. So the next thing to do after that, if it works, which I'm hoping it will, would be a new story. And a new, like, trio of expansions that we get told about, I guess. And I think that's great, honestly. It's exciting knowing that Midnight is coming. It's exciting knowing that the Last Titan is coming. I always say that I think the biggest roadblock to WoW's storytelling is cliffhanger fatigue. You saw this at its peak during BFA and Shadowlands. Cliffhanger fatigue. That thing of you never getting answers. You know? It's like, what's coming next? And the raid will end and be like, ooh, bet you can't wait to see what's coming next. And it's like, I kind of wish you just tell me at this stage, right? Partly because I have cliffhanger fatigue, and partly, yeah, lost the video game pretty much. And partly because without knowing that there is another patch coming, you kind of lost my faith on this patch cadence. So now I'm just worried. Every patch that comes out, I'm not like enjoying the patch. I'm kind of in the back of my mind thinking, is this going to be enough to last me however long it's going to be until the next patch? You know? So there was always like that undermining of any new content where you were like, I've waited so long for this content. Was it worth the wait? And how long am I going to have to wait until the next one? And they haven't actually tied anything up in this patch. It's all just promises for the next patch and the next patch and the next patch. It was Lost, the video game. It was Moffat, the video game. The thing I would compare it to is David Moffat showrunning Doctor Who and indeed Sherlock. This idea that, you know, there's always like this promise of something, you know, this is so clever. This is all going to come together, and it just never does. And it's always ending on a cliffhanger, always ending on a, well, I know we haven't explained it yet, but maybe we will. And that's Moffat's huge weakness as a showrunner. And then he never sorts it ever. And yeah, I feel like that there was a sense of that happening in BFA and Shadowlands. And I think one of the genius things about Dragonflight was obviously, famously, the roadmaps. And the roadmaps gave you that, you know, you could relax. Because even if you didn't love what was in the patch, even if you got bored of the patch, it's like, another patch soon. I know it. It's on the roadmap. I even know lots of what's in that patch. It's on the roadmap. Right, so you know you just had a lot more patience for the game. You cut the game a lot more slack story wise because you have a schedule of when it's coming, and that actually means a lot in an episodic game like this, in a perpetual living world like this. in a world with a perpetual story like this, knowing, and with the World Soul Saga, I think that does that on a grand scale. It's like, there is an ending to this story. So, you know what? If you don't get the answers that you felt you needed at the end of like any given patch, or even at the end of the World Soul Saga, there is an ending. You know when the ending is, you know? And I think it also gives them freedom, because they don't have to kind of, you know, draw you in and do that Netflix thing of drawing you in to midnight. You know, they can give something of an ending at the end of the World Soul Saga that then leads into midnight, because we know the at the end of the War Within leading into midnight, because we know the War Within is only the beginning of the story. People aren't going to go, oh, well, that was good, I don't need to know, you know, I'm done now, don't need to know about midnight, because we know it all is part of one story. And it's just great. It's just really good to know that, you know. I think with games like this, there's an awful lot to be said for letting people know the route and making the exciting part how you get there. You know, letting people know the destination, and then the fun is in finding out how you get there. I think it worked when they told us that Garrosh was the final boss of Mop before Mop released. I think it works to do that. You know? Bertolt Brecht starts all of his plays by telling you the ending. So does Shakespeare most of the time. Like, you know, back in Shakespeare's time, every play would have started by a narrator coming on and just telling you what happens in the play. And then you just enjoy how it happens. And I think that's really, really good, actually. I think that's really cool. So yeah, I if this works and if they do a good job on it, and oh my God forbid it revitalize WoW and the player base and stuff like that, then yeah, I'd be absolutely up for after the World Soul Saga, which is going to tie up a lot of loose ends. You know, the World Soul Saga, I think the Titans and the Void will not be a thing after the World Soul Saga. The same way that the Burning Legion is not a thing anymore. You know, we might bump into demons and shit every now and then. We might bump into some leftovers of the Burning Legion. The Burning Legion isn't really a thing in WoW anymore. Yeah, Columbo is another great example of that, absolutely. And I think by the end of the World Soul Saga, the Void, certainly the Void, and probably the Titans won't be a thing anymore. What would be the next threat to us? The Arathi Empire. The Arathi Empire is being set up as, you know, we might go there in the World Soul Saga, who knows? But the Arathi Empire is being set up as a whole empire at the other side of the planet, on the western side of the planet that we can't get to at the moment. Lame? I mean, I think it depends. I think it depends like how you do it, right? And that would be very light-centric, very light-heavy, yeah. Exactly. So we'll see. We might go there before. But I think it's probably cool to set it up as the next thing. The best writers find a way to let the reader know what's about to happen, but the characters do not. Yeah, I agree with that. I think that works particularly well with a game like WoW. You know, Arathi Empire feels like a setup for something bigger in Midnight. Yeah, I think that could be absolutely true too. Yeah, I think so. I think this saga is the end of WoW. Holy Zeke. Well, I think a lot of people are thinking like that, but I think like the reasons to end WoW after the World Soul Saga would be, I think there would be, even if the World Soul Saga is successful, then the reasons to end WoW after it would be even less than the reasons to end WoW right now. You know, the main reasons to not end WoW are it's literally Blizzard's biggest earner and most consistent earner. And why would you end it? Like, why would you? No one wants them to. Apart from, you know, the usuals. Like, you know, it seems a bit silly to because capitalism. Well, I mean, I think you're using that as an example to keep WoW going, right? But I don't think that's honestly. Here's the thing, right? WoW is always going to have servers, whether they're run by Blizzard or run privately. You know, there are enough people that will want to play WoW for at least the next couple of generations, i.e. until I'm like in my 70s. And so it will happen. People will play WoW. So Blizz might as well be making money off those people. Like, even if WoW is being run by a fucking skeleton crew, you know, and it's just like classic servers and shit up, WoW is going to still be going, you know? And there's a whole bunch of people that are just bored of WoW and don't want to play WoW anymore. But then I'm like, why do you want WoW 2 then? I don't know. Like, I just don't see, you know, why would you need a WoW 2 is the question I always want. Like, first of all, and no arguments here, right? But put a 1 in chat if you would really like the end of WoW and for them to do WoW 2 in like the foreseeable future. Or at the end of the world, Soul Saga even. Put a 1 in chat if that's what you want. Okay, so there's a couple of you. Holy Zeke, Starwalker, Sister Bliss, Alan Luhu, all people that do not sub to this channel, I've noticed. Freya. Literally everyone who's saying they want a WoW 2 is not sub to this channel. Weird. Okay, cool. So my question goes to you guys then. And like I say, this isn't a debate. This isn't an argument. I'm actually just after your opinions, okay? I'm not trying to destroy your assholes with facts and logic. I'll do that with my dick to your mum. But like, what do you need a WoW 2 for that you can't do in WoW? Like, what is it that you want from WoW 2 that you need WoW 2 for? WoW 2 for. WoW 2 to achieve. Unreal 5 graphics, better graphics. Okay, cool. If you said something else, sit on that one, we'll come back to it. So, Unreal 5 graphics. Yeah, I think you would need a WoW 2 for that. Because that's not just an update of graphics. That's not just making the graphics better. What you want to do in that case is you want to completely change the graphical style, like the artistic vision of the game that you're playing, right? So that's what you'd want to achieve. That's what you'd want. Yeah, I think you would need WoW 2 for that. Absolutely. Yeah. Anything else? What else would you need WoW 2 for? So, like, I think that when it comes to MMOs, here's my personal opinion on that, since we're here, since it's my channel. My personal opinion on that is that graphics that you're talking about, like Unreal, I'm assuming you're talking like something like photorealistic, like very realistic, gritty graphics, right? Which I think are awesome. I'd be very, very cool about that. But I don't think they tend to work very well for MMOs. In my opinion, and this is only my opinion, okay? This is only my opinion. But in my opinion, I think WoW is the best looking MMO there is. I think literally it looks better and more impressive than any other MMO. And I include MMOs like Black Desert Online and stuff like that in there. I just think they look better. I just think it looks better than Final Fantasy XIV. I think it just looks better. There is room for improvements. Agreed. And it does improve all the time. You know? And so what that tells me is that, you know, different graphical styles work better for MMOs than they do, you know, for other games. That makes me think that the photorealistic style that we're talking about which I think you're talking about when you say like you want to build WoW 2 in Unreal, makes me think that wouldn't work as well for an MMO. That's my gut feeling. And also that it would age worse as well. And I think that's the main reason, because MMOs are designed to last for years and years and years. And so they have to have a timeless quality to the art style. And ultra-realistic graphics don't really do that. They age much worse because you can always get more photorealistic with new technology, right? So I don't know. My gut feeling is that because WoW is the best looking MMO, and many have tried, many newer MMOs don't look as good as WoW, my feeling is that they made a good choice with the art direction in WoW. So, yeah, I'm not sure yeah. But hey, man, that would be a reason to have a WoW 2, would be to completely change the art style. Absolutely, you would need a WoW 2 to do that. Okay, sorry about that. What other reasons would you need for a WoW 2? Action combat. Action combat. Sure. So, yeah, you would. You would need a WoW 2 for action combat. Again, this is only my opinion, but I think for RPGs in general, mind you, not just MMO RPGs, but I think that tab targeting is better. And the reason why I think tab targeting is better is because you can still have an incredibly twitchy, high skill ceiling for tab targeting, but it allows the stats of the character to come through more and be more important. And in my opinion, and you can call me old school on this, right? But in my opinion, an RPG and an MMORPG, the stats and the character building should be very important. And the more action-based combat is, the less important the stats of the character become. Because then it's like, the more you lean on the action side of the combat, the more player skill is important. And you can still have very important player skill with tab targeting, but the stats are always very important as well then, you know? It's why I think that the Divinity and Baldur's Gate 3 systems for combat are better than any other like character-based RPG, single-player RPG as well. Because for me, RPGs are, you know, the stats that your characters get and increase and specialize in are what makes an RPG. That's true for MMOs as well. So I think you can't have action combat, because that then eradicates a lot of the stats and makes them worthless. And I think it is an important and satisfying part of an MMO is like stat building, right? I would also argue that WoW has the best combat of any MMO. Like, there are MMOs that have action combat. There are MMOs that have a mixture of action combat and tab targeting. And one of the reasons WoW survives, and obviously there is a bias in this chat. We all play WoW. We all like WoW. We don't all play every other MMO. So I'm acknowledging that bias here. But I have played a lot of MMOs at various levels, but some at, you know, relatively high levels, like, you know, max level levels. And I mean, I think one of the reasons that WoW is so good is that it's just nice to press buttons in. I feel like it's the best game to press buttons in that I've ever played, let alone MMO. And one of the reasons I keep coming back to WoW, even when I was really enjoying Final Fantasy XIV, even when I was like, this game is just so fucking good, why can't WoW be more like this? I missed the combat in WoW so much. Like, so much I missed it. And every time when I came back to WoW and I started just doing a fucking rotation, I was like, 14 is janky. I don't think it is. I think 14 is one of the better combat systems in MMOs. I think like their rotations are really good and interesting, and you know, like it looks great, and I like the approach they take with dungeons and stuff. I think it's one of the better combat systems in MMOs, but just not as good as WoW. Like, totally. So, but I asked the question, why would you need a WoW 2? And you answered, and that was a good answer. You would, if you wanted to change the combat system significantly, yes, you'd have to have a WoW 2. So if you wanted to build it as like Unreal, if you wanted a more action-based combat system, then yes, you would need a WoW 2. Is there anything else from those people that would like a WoW 2? Why else would you want WoW 2? The engine. Okay, but like, presumably you want a more modern engine to do different things that you can't do now. So what would those things be? On large groups, it's lagging as hell. I I think we're going into like the realms of talking about things we don't really understand here. Like, I feel like that's just an MMO thing, and the fact that literally every MMO, when it has a big launch, big update, or when it launches, just melts. I feel like that's not a WoW thing, and I feel like that's not even an engine thing. You know, like New World melted when they released it. Last 14 expansion melted when they released it. It's just something like, I think if the last 20 years has taught us anything, it's that you just can't launch a big MMO update without it melting to some degree. That server backend has nothing to do with the engine. Yeah, but I feel like I don't see what's wrong with WoW's engine, to be honest. I feel like the code is very spaghetti and doesn't allow you to implement new things very easily. But what would be the new things that you would like to implement that you can't because of WoW's code would be the question I'd ask. Because I feel like new code, new engine is such a vague fucking thing that could mean a million different things. Like I'd like to make the question, just like, what is the thing that you would want to add that you feel like you can't because of WoW's engine and because of WoW's code? Which I think is fair. VR. You would need WoW 2. I don't think you would. And I don't think like graphical updates, more customizations, player housing, like they are looking at putting player housing into WoW right now, I can guarantee you. Okay. So like, I don't think you would need a WoW 2 for player housing or, more customization options, because we proved that you can have more customization options in WoW. If you told people playing in vanilla that you could have like 3D chess pieces and 3D leg pieces, and they'd have said, oh, we're going to need a WoW 2 for that, but we didn't. You can do stuff, and I guess a fresh start would be another thing, right? A fresh start is the other thing I see people say. I mean, so what I've gathered from these answers, and if there are other things that I'm not saying, let me know in chat for sure. But I think I'm representing this clearly. The reason you'd want a WoW 2 is so that you could do it in Unreal, which personally I don't consider to be the best engine for running an MMO in graphically. Personally, my own personal opinion. You could significantly change the combat to be more action orientated, and you would like a fresh start in like the WoW universe. You want an Unreal game with action combat where you're starting from scratch. Do you think that's fair? I put it to you that you don't want WoW 2. I put it to you that you want a third-person, over-the-shoulder action RPG set in the WoW universe. I put it to you that you want God of War, but for WoW. Which is awesome. Which is really, really good. That would be cool. But that doesn't need to be WoW 2. That doesn't need to be a WoW game. That just needs to be a Warcraft game. Like, you want a single-player action RPG, over-the-shoulder, like, third-person action RPG. God of Warcraft, yeah. Let's call it God of Warcraft as shorthand. Yeah, you want God of Warcraft. And that's cool, man. That's great. That would be a great game. That would be really good. I'd be well into that. That would be cool. I'd be really into that. But I don't need WoW 2 for that. I certainly don't need to wrap up WoW 1 for that. Like, that would complement WoW rather than replace it. I want an MMO with other players. Well, I don't think action combat MMOs are very good, personally. That would be my worry, is that action combat in MMOs tends to be kind of shit. And when you get MMOs that are more action combat based, they tend to, like, the MMO aspects of that game tend to become lobbies. Does that make sense? So, you know, whatever. But yeah, I get it. I personally, I would not want to scrap WoW and go on to a WoW 2. Like, part of my connection with WoW is that I've got characters in this game that I've played forever. I've got collections in this game that I've built up forever. And I wouldn't like them to close the servers just so they can try something new that might not work. You know? Yeah, and that's not an addiction. That's not like a sunk cost fallacy. That's like, I like having shit that I've built up over 20 years. It's nice. It's fun. It's appealing to me. Yeah, so for me, anyway, just to finish up with this before we go and watch the new dev interview, if this is the shape that The War Within took, yeah, I'd absolutely be up for this. Definitely. If we got 3 seasons with the same patch cadence as we got in Dragonflight, with the same amount of patches as we got in Dragonflight, same amount of content we got in Dragonflight, I could happily, not just happily, but preferably lose Season 4 and move on to the expansion quicker. I'd happily do that. That would be not just acceptable to me, that would be preferable to me. And the original question was, where does the Haronir fit in that? Yeah, thank you. Thank you for circling me back round to that. So, honestly, at the moment, here's my educated guess. At the moment, the Harronir do not feature in 11.1 very much. There's just not many of them there. The Arathi are fucking everywhere. The Earthen are fucking everywhere in 11.0, sorry. But the Harronir are not. So I think the soonest that we get some big, fat, juicy Harronir story is 11.1. Which means, in my opinion, it would make the most sense with the way it looks like the story can pan out for them to become playable in 11.2. That would be my guess. It wouldn't surprise me if they were much, much earlier. But that's my conservative estimate. I think they are 100% coming. As are we all. That feels too far? Yeah, I think you're right. I think Blizz will want to put it in Season 2 somewhere. 11.1, 11.15, or 11.17. Probably 11.17. Okay, fine. 11.17 it is. Haronir. Okay, you know that says Haronir, okay?